Wild woman.
Hey there, soul being. Welcome to Wider Circles Podcast. You know that whole love and light, positive vibes only in spirituality? Yeah, that's not this. Here, we honor all aspects of ourselves. I'm Mariah Raven, mom, interspiritual healer and teacher, ceremonialist, ancestral reclamation guide, mental health crises and suicide prevention advocate, and spiritual life coach. We are here to get down and dirty on all things spiritual healing that aren't talked about enough. Things like mental health through a holistic lens, gender-inclusive womb healing, ancestral healing, nervous system healing, reparenting, rewilding, shadow work, sacred rage, grief and loss, and healing the darker aspects of the feminine. May what is shared in this space be helpful, be practical, and be beneficial to all that find this podcast. And let that energy ripple out into wider circles of healing for the good of all. Let's get to it. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Wider Circles Podcast. You'll notice this format is a little bit differently. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're on Spotify, you just get to hear the lovely voices. But I, of course, am your host, Mariah Raven, and I actually have a very special surprise for you guys this week. So I have the one and only illustrious Luna Willow, who I mentioned in last week's podcast that we were going to have some things together coming up. Well, surprise! I have her here this week, and I'm going to pass it over to her to introduce herself, and then we have some really awesome stuff to share with you guys. So I'm passing it on over to you, Luna. Take it away.
Hi guys, I'm Luna Willow, also known as the Healing Autumn Sage. I am a mother of two, and I am a lifelong soul-led practitioner, and I want to share some of my wisdom and medicine with you guys.
Yes, I'm so excited for this, and I'm so excited for having you on here, and so that like people can see you and work with you and to share like what we have coming up. So flowing to that, we are actually coming to share with you guys that we have an offering called Magick 101, and that's magic with a K. And it's an offering that Luna and I feel very, very passionate about. And I feel like in this day and age, it's kind of where we're heading. It's very important and I think necessary. So before I pass it over to Luna, so that way, because we're going to kind of riff on like what is Magick 101 and talk about this with you guys. But before we get started, I want to share explain why we spell it Magick with a K 101, because so I'm sure that many of you have seen like, Chris Angel or like the magic that's done on stage or like look over here while this hand is doing. So I just wanted to explain the difference. So that's Magick, Magic. And it was made popular by like Penn and Teller magic, right? Like the magic kits with the wand and the cards and the hat. But what we're here for is, and if you found this podcast or either one of us, then you already know, this is spiritual magic. This is real magic. So we spell it with the K to differentiate between the illusion and what we're really manifesting and working with here. So Luna, what do you have to say about this? Because like I'm so excited to have you on here.
No, I agree with you. I think a lot of times there is that misconception when you say magic, people kind of get the two confused and like it all kind of blurs together. But there is a big difference between the illusion of like stage magic and then the authenticity of what real magic actually encompasses. And I think it's really important for people to understand that we are walking, breathing, living magic, just being. Like we don't have to do anything special to encompass that magic.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's the beauty of it is, in spirituality it can get so overwhelming, which is why I'm so glad that we're starting this, because I remember when I first started out, and this was like years ago, but like I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, crystals? Oh, astrology," and like learning all these different like avenues you could take. But then once you like peek in that door, it's like an endless library of like what, like there's so many stones, and like there's so much once you get into astrology and like all these things. It can get overwhelming for someone. And I think not having somewhere to go to kind of learn to get started can it can almost sway someone away from their craft for a while if they don't have that. It can be too much. And learning at the beginning that everything comes from the self is so key, because then everything else is just a bonus.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Like one of the first things that I first learned about, and actually I can't even say that like I found this like studying or looking anywhere, growing up with like the church background. One of the things that always stuck with me was when they talk about like in Genesis and the creation of man and how quote unquote God breathed the breath of life into man and made him in his likeness and image. And I could never like really shake that, even though I didn't fully still agree with the concept of what the church taught. So I was just like channeling. And at the time, I didn't realize like that's what was happening. And so I was like, I had no resources, no like special tools. It was just myself in my room. And so I was told, like intuitively, I was told to go look up what can you do with sacred breath? Like what does sacred breath even mean? And like when I actually came across like information on it, I was like, "Oh my God, like this is everything that I needed."
I think it's incredible. Like that is the beauty of the soul led path, I think. And that's why I'm glad to see like you at like people like us who have had that like soul led experience. And the more of us that speak up on it, the more that it helps other people who are kind of navigating that path but maybe feel invalidated to be like, oh shit, like my experiences matter. And just like that, that's how I was with egg cleanses. Like I always grew up, Nana had a basket in her china cabinet, and it had all these different like Polish eggs. They were all painted. They were like wooden eggs and stuff. But I,
Oh yeah.
I would always get in trouble because I'd sneak them out of the china cabinet and I'd be behind the couch like with all the eggs. And fast forward, I learned that like those eggs are used in like Polish shamanic healing practices, and you paint them depending on what you're working with, the colors, the patterns, everything's specific. And I'm like, that's so funny, like hindsight. And the egg cleanses, I had done them like in my older years when I got like more active again. And then I doing research, I was like, why do I do this? And it kept leading me to like Hispanic folk practices. And I was like, but I'm not. So then it kind of made me feel like almost like I was appropriating, and I felt kind of, you know, and so I stopped doing them for a while. And then after Nana died, I like got all these like Slavic, I've talked to you all the books I'm always showing you. And in there, it was talking about how like egg cleanses are one of the biggest like Polish folk practices. And I was like, get out of town. Like it's right there.
Yeah,
So it's beautiful to see that.
yeah. That's funny, just to touch on that real quick, because like one of the first like quote unquote spells cleanses that I ever did was the egg cleanse. And like it literally, like I had been studying hardcore for probably about a year and a half before I even felt like enough courage to try to do something. But without going into detail, we got results. We got definite results the same day.
Exactly. You can't shake it, especially once you've found your like roots, whatever those roots might be. It's a done deal. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Um so this is why we wanted to bring this to you guys, because both of us being very soul led in our journeys and seeing where it's gotten us. And like with ancestral work, you know, it's not just like the paper, right? It's not like just doing the DNA tests or, start like ancestry.com, familysearch.com. It's not just like those physical documents. As you and I know, it's also the unseen. It's like a foot in both realms. And like for myself, that was very soul led at first. I was like feeling the whispers. I didn't have any concrete evidence. And following the whispers led me to the evidence, you
Yes.
know? And so we want to offer this to you guys. We want to give you guys the opportunities that we've come to find, make it easier for you guys rather than having to bump around in the dark, and Luna is also a moderator in Sacred Inspirations and Wider Circles. So us being there and also having those roles, like we are there for the additional support, if somebody needs us. And so I think it's important. So Magick 101 is basically going to be us. It's going to be classes. It's not one class or what have you. It's going to be classes, and we're going to be walking you through how to step onto your spiritual and magical journey, whatever that looks like for you. Because like the late Ram Dass said, we are all just walking each other home. So we could be walking the same road, but it's going to look completely different for each one of us. So we want to give you guys that space while also sharing what we've learned, so it's easier for you guys. And we just have this insatiable hunger to teach, and so we're just ready to give you guys like everything we've got.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanted to touch real quick, like, so you were talking about walking between the realms. Like, I really, really want to validate that because back when so I started having my experiences when I was a child, but it terrified me because I didn't have someone who could explain what was happening to me. And as a teenager, I really thought I was battling with psychosis. And the best way that I could explain to people was I feel like I'm anchored in the physical reality, but I'm also anchored in the spiritual. Like I'm torn between these two worlds. Like I walk in between these two worlds. And because of lack of information and knowledge of the people around me, they'd be like, well, that's not really possible. And now to be where I am in my practice, that actually is possible. And it actually makes a lot of sense. So for anyone else that feels that way, you're totally valid. Trust your intuition. You know exactly what's up.
I'm so glad you said that, because it is true. And especially coming out of, where society was for us growing up, and like also the lack of understanding, not only in the spiritual side of things, but also in the mental health field. And now people are starting to know more. I think it's every 3 years they update the resources and information for the Mental Health Institute of America. So, and then the AFSP. So it's awesome. And so getting to and that, I'm also seeing a lot of therapists, counselors, people who work in the mental health field and the medical field, who have either stepped away for a little while because they didn't agree with how things were, went down their own spiritual journey, and then came back to it with all of that new perspective. And I am excited to see where the world is shifting to with that.
I know, I'm so excited too.
I know. It's gonna be a beautiful time. But again, like Luna said, you're so validated with that. It's important to know that, to trust yourself,
Yeah.
especially, and I know, Luna, you probably felt this too, growing up with having adults and people who are responsible for you in whatever setting, not only like invalidating your experience and your thoughts and what's going on, but also like telling you, oh, it's this, or you need to do that, or ABCXYZ. And that just, it's like a dead halt to your spirit.
Yes.
Every time I've come to that crossroads in my life, I've always chose the other path, like the path, like not what they told me, because I was like, no, that doesn't sit right with me, and like thing for impact, whatever comes, you know, and that's what led me here, you know? So trust that voice.
All out. Yes.
Exactly. So that's a gist of like what we're gonna be like, or why we want to share this with you all. We want to create that safe space, and with social media being such a big influence on everything today, and this is something that we also talk about in like our Talk Saves Lives courses, when we're talking like mental health and kids, like youth mental health and factors. There's benefits and there's not benefits to social media. And with that, Luna and I have seen our fair share of like misinformation all around the spiritual community on many different apps, different platforms. And this is something that first came to my light. Do you remember back in 2020 when there was a whole group of like baby witches that were trying to hex the moon? Do you remember this? Like, oh my goodness. So it's really important that we have a safe space where like proper teaching can be had, you know, and a safe space where questions can be asked, you know, like, because it's so needed.
No mental bypassing, no gatekeeping. Like, we genuinely want to share our wisdom and information so that you can be better equipped on your journey and make like smart, intuitive decisions as opposed to following what the crowd is going to do. Because like another thing that I see in the spiritual community is everybody's all up in arms about the twin flame journey. And it's to the point where it has been romanticized in such a toxic way that I don't think people genuinely understand what the twin flame journey is even about. And so that's a whole other subject for another day. But like, it's really important that you're able to understand and just start out with like the basics, which is what we want to bring and show you how to do, so that you can hone your intuition and you can build and cultivate that discernment, so that as you're journeying through and new information comes your way, you're able to tell for yourself without needing external validation from resources and people and different outlets. Like, you know what is right within your soul.
Exactly. Each and every one of us has our own unique medicine, our own unique frequency that we come to this world to share. And we will never step into that true frequency of ourselves if we think we have to follow a certain person or a certain like. And there are people out there who are absolutely also not teaching like proper magic, or not teaching, you know, the importance of protection or doing your research before reaching out to certain energies and all of that. And so that's really what Luna and I want to do, is to just be able to help you all feel confident in your magic, to be able to source from yourself, and to have that safe place to ask questions and receive guidance, you know, because it's important. It's very important. And so, oh, and I also want to say too, like I said, this isn't like a one-time class, you know, like there's going to be different classes. The first one that we are having is going to be, like we said, like on the basics, you know, like we're bringing it back to like, okay, when we were baby witches, right? Who would we have wanted to help answer those questions for us, to help guide us? So we're kind of being that person now for all of you and for each other. And so the first class is going to be just the basics, like the core basics, so you can get started and really feel confident in it. And then, we're going to have one that's just on like protection, banishing, warding, like that kind of like that
Right.
energy. So it's going to be, every class is going to be specifically themed around certain topics so that you really get your fill and we're not brushing over a bunch of topics at once. And so I do highly recommend, like, if this sounds like something you're interested in, to definitely, we're going to share how you can register, but definitely, share it with your friends also, because it's going to be a continuous thing and it's going to be a wellspring of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I do also want to mention, we'll plug really quickly our girlfriend, Alex. She right now she's doing her thing. Life is lifing, but we're sending her love. And she's also going to be making an appearance soon. And so right now she's the woman behind the curtain. But I wanted to like drop her in real quick that even though she's not in this video with us, she's with us. So yes. So Luna, let's tell them how they can register if they're interested.
If you would like, if you could reach out to either one of us, if you're part of Sacred Inspirations or Wider Circles, you can find me on YouTube, The Healing Autumn Sage. You could also find me on Facebook and Spotify. So any one of those places, or you can reach me at thehealingaautumnsage@gmail.com. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions, point you in any right directions, whatever would help.
Awesome. Okay, so before we close out, I just want people to know kind of what they can come to you for if, they were curious about the lovely Luna Willow and the lovely Healing Autumn Sage. So how can people connect with you? And what kind of offerings can they expect when they work with you?
Okay, well, there's a bit of a variety that I offer. I do channeling and divination. I can help with spell work and things of that nature, cleansing of various forms, coaching and guiding you in cleansing, shadow work, inner child work, inner teen work, how to reclaim your power, take your power back, and not only take your power back, but it's very important that when you're calling your power back, that you're also cleansing and restoring it back to its highest, most healed timeline, so that you're not getting these tarnished fragments of energy coming back. But yeah, it's like a little bit of everything sprinkled in there. So if you have questions, just please feel free to ask. I would love to answer any questions.
Beautiful. Yes, and I do highly recommend her poems. She did one for me and it was absolutely incredible. I go back to it and I listen to it quite often. Actually. And it's helpful because, sometimes you just got to go back and remind yourself of who the hell you are,
Yeah.
So if anyone is interested in working with Luna, I'm going to have links in the show notes to all of her sources. So you can reach out, you can connect to her on whatever platform or whatever feels right for you. And before we go, is there any closing words that you just want to part with our listeners this evening?
If they take anything away from today's segment, I just want them to know that they are magic. The magic isn't outside of them. It comes from within. And I think that is a very key component to realize earlier on in your journey, as opposed to later in your journey, and then having to go back and like refigurate everything in your head. So you are the magic. It all starts with you and it all comes from within you.
Absolutely beautiful. I just second that. I have no greater wisdom other than you are the magic. So I'm going to leave you all with that. I bid you all a beautiful farewell, and we so look forward to seeing you in our Magic 101 course. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week. that's it for today. You can also find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Wider Circles, Hudson Valley Healing Circles. We also have a private all women and female identifying group on Facebook, also called Wider Circles, Hudson Valley Healing Circles. We also have a gender inclusive group called Sacred Inspirations Conscious Community. I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen. If you liked what you heard, please follow us and share with your friends, leave a review. Every little bit of interaction helps us get this podcast out there to more people who may just need to hear this today. I will see you next week. And before I go, I'd like to remind you that you are divine and you are medicine. Every bit of you. So go easy on yourself. Give yourself grace. Take up space. And until next time, keep it true to you. This is Mariah Raven signing off.
Sacred place you call home, this temple of life, we are calling you. Join us, women, wise, wild, and